This is the point where those characters that the story is getting you hooked on start to shine. Oh my mother... Jesus, thank you, they saved her. Welcome to Mythos in Media, I'm Carlos, and I'm here in literally the worst Squid Game costume ever made to talk about your favorite movies, TV shows, video games, and anime from the perspective of a published author. Today, we're talking about Squid Game Season 2, but before we get to that...
Welcome to today's game. You will be playing the YouTube game. When she says green light, you must like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon before she says red light. If you haven't completed all 3 actions by then, you will be eliminated.
Did you already complete all 3 actions? If not, I'm supposed to eliminate you, but I can look the other way, so you can just do it and done? Cool! Jesus, I can now take off this freaking thing. I really hated it. Whew! It was hot. So first of all, let's talk about Squid Game Season 1. Season 1 wasn't just a show, it was a cultural explosion. Not just because of its unique visual style, the twists that left us like the games that gave us anxiety, and the characters that we fell in love with. Ali, my boy, they did you dirty. And Love to Hate. But also because it came out in 2021, during the time Netflix started to panic because of the pandemic and production of a lot of shows was halted, and they started seriously looking to South Korea, where they found a treasure trove of amazing shows. Small parenthesis, if you haven't watched Kingdom, you've missed out on the best zombie show in the history of the world. You're thinking zombies are over? You owe it to yourself to be proved wrong by watching Kingdom. I might actually do a mini review of that one later. When Squid Game came out, it started kind of as a trickle. Most people didn't know what to make of the pastel colors and the weird title. I honestly thought it was actually a reality competition show, so I just skipped it. But when the first reactions started coming out, it exploded. The moment that doll turned around and people started dropping like flies, people knew this was something special. Squid Game wasn't just about people playing deadly versions of kids' games. It was about survival, desperation, and yeah, some pretty messed up choices. It hit us right in the feels and made us ask, what would I do if I were in their shoes? Spoiler alert, I would either be the NPC that dies 1 minute into the first game, or the guy that freezes with anxiety and causes the entire team to die. What truly set Squid Game apart from other battle royale or one survivor kind of shows wasn't just the very unique visual style or that cutesy but disturbing music that plays throughout what should be a dramatic situation. It was how relatable it all was. Think of it, a bunch of broke, desperate people willing to risk it all for a shot at getting out of debt and having financial freedom. It shone a light on the level of disparity and debt in society and how that ruins people's lives. It wasn't just about rooting for someone to win, it was about realizing how many people get themselves into impossible debt and don't make it out, or people who live in serious poverty, making them so desperate that they would gamble away their lives for just one chance to have a better existence. The show asked, how much money is your life worth? And in a very cynical way, assigned an actual prize to each life lost during the game. It was a mirror showing us how messed up society can be. From crushing debt to the illusion of choice, we see realities of gambling addiction, of supporting a family when you're an immigrant, of greed, callousness, and even selfless sacrifice. You felt these characters plight so deeply because we all know someone who's in that level of debt and need, and in many cases that person is us. At risk of oversharing, this is a struggle that I've dealt with since the start of the pandemic. I had just lost my job, my new business went under, the bills and credit card debt kept piling up, the bank foreclosed on my mortgage, and watching Squid Game, it kind of made me wonder, would I participate in a game like this? And the truth is, maybe? Desperation overrides logic and morals, and that's what we see in this story. It isn't a story for us to necessarily judge people, but a story in which we would ask ourselves, would I be that person. The horrifying scenario in fiction touched a very real human need, and that resonated with the world. It turned Squid Game into a worldwide hit. And now that season 2 is here, the big question is, did it blow our minds again, or did it fall flat? I'll be perfectly honest, I did not think Squid Game needed a season 2, so I approached season 2 with a little bit of apprehension, but I'll say I had an open mind. I wanted to see where it took us. I tend to be optimistic by nature when it comes to shows I watch, and I give them the benefit of the doubt unless they actually screw it up. For me, until the very last few minutes of the final episode of season 1, it mostly felt like a complete story to me. Yes, there was the thing with the front man and his brother, but that could have just been a tragic twist, like this guy was looking for his brother, he found out his brother was a player, so he probably died, then learned he was in fact the front man right before he died. It's not a super satisfying conclusion, but my point is, it didn't need a season 2, because what they did felt so pure that a season 2 had too much of a chance to mess it up. The moment Gi-hun turns around, instead of getting on the airplane to go see his daughter, which would have been a satisfying conclusion to his arc, it didn't feel organic. It felt like Netflix reached into the screen, grabbed him by the hand, and pulled him back like, no, you're a franchise now. To add to that, I wasn't a big fan of Il-nam being revealed as the villain in season 1, because even though it was foreshadowed incredibly well, that's a writing thumbs up, it felt like they dragged one of the season's most emotional moments for the sake of a twist, and it retroactively took away the humanity and honesty of those scenes, which is a writing thumbs down. So in my mind, it was like, if they didn't handle that so well, is there a chance season 2 will destroy the legacy and the emotional impact of season 1? Well, time to find out. Surprisingly, season 2 is very good, with interesting characters, some truly twisted games, incredibly tense moments, and most surprisingly yet, knowing what happened in season 1 makes the events in this one have more weight and urgency. Even though in season 1 they said more than one person could survive, and they say that here too, when we meet all of these new people with dreams and goals and their own personal struggles and stories, the knowledge of what happened in season 1 really makes us suffer every second of this. As of this point, season 2 spoilers are in full effect, but if you want the non-spoiler summary, season 2 takes a couple of episodes to get going, but once it gets going, it feels just as thrilling as season 1. It has new twists, some great changes that make the formula feel fresh again, and even though there is one particular arc in this season that doesn't quite work, and I'll talk about that in the spoiler section, all I'll say is that this doesn't impact the overall season negatively, because given that this plot will likely be resolved in season 3, which is the final season, it will probably look better in retrospect. I just wish it had been handled a little bit better in this one, but by all means, if you haven't watched season 2, go and watch it. It's excellent, and it makes me very excited about season 3. Even though it suffers from some of the issues of being a middle chapter in a complete story, it's an amazing watch, and you will want to watch it to be ready for June when season 3 comes out. Season 2 starts a little slower than season 1. It takes a couple of episodes to get going, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Where in season 1, you get the first game in the first episode, mainly because as a new series, they needed a hook. This season, there's more stuff to set up for that transition before the new game begins. So it's only natural that they took their time. Also, they're introducing new things to the story that require to be established properly before we can proceed. Instead of getting the first official game in episode 1, what we get is a familiar face, the recruiter being a complete sociopath. It gives actor Geum-ju, whom you might remember from Train to Busan, another amazing Korean zombie recommendation aside from Kingdom, a chance to shine. He's playing a sadistic game in which he makes homeless people choose between food and a lottery ticket. Spoiler, most of them choose choose the lottery ticket, only to stomp all over the leftover bread in front of their eyes. Gonna be honest here, most of that plastic didn't break. If I were starving, I'd still eat it. Then you get a combination of rock, paper, scissors and Russian roulette that you didn't know you needed in your life. It helps keep the story tense while bringing forth the main theme of children's games, rock, paper, scissors, with a deadly twist, Russian roulette. This gives the recruiter one hell of an exit from the series. Where I feel the pacing drags a little bit is when you get to episode 2, which gives us the background on other characters, as well as continuing Gi-hun's attempt to get back in the games in order to put an end to them. The issue here is that we're 2 episodes in and still no actual games until you get to episode 3, so it kind of feels like the season is taking too long to get to the main event. You see, sequels are tricky because more often than not, networks and streaming companies tend to learn the wrong lessons from successful series. For example, thinking that the popularity is only due to the games and the bloodshed, and leaning too hard into the spectacle, which can make the series lose that emotional punch. So yeah, it's good that they're taking the time to establish the characters and establish the plot, but stretching it out too much can feel boring, which is kind of what happened with episode 2. But that concern gets quickly replaced by an entirely different one when we get to episode 3. As I said, this is when we officially get to the games. The first thing we get is a change in the rules, where before the players could only vote once whether they wanted to leave the games, and if they left, they took nothing with them. Here, that's turned on its ear. Now, they get to vote after every single game, and if they choose to leave, they take whatever amount they have accumulated up to that moment. So at first, I have to be honest, I wasn't so sure whether this was a good idea or not, because I thought it would lower the stakes. Would it stop feeling like they're trapped in this game they can't get out of? You know, I was also worried about the fact that sitting there to watch a voting sequence after every game would get repetitive and boring, but neither of those two things happened. The fact that they can choose to leave after each game gives players a false sense of security. It also taps into human greed, and both of these things uncover a layer that was only explored a little in season 1. But here, it becomes the entire core of the story, which is what is known as the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias which makes people feel that the more they invest in something, the more they should stick it out despite difficulties or obstacles or even life-threatening risks. So as each game progresses, the way the human mind responds to this is thinking, well, I already survived this long, I risked my life these many times, I can't just back out now. Couple that with basic human greed, which gets stoked by seeing that damned piggy bank fill up more and more each time, and it becomes a recipe for disaster, because on top of the sunk cost fallacy, now they're thinking, well, I could get more money. And by attaching a specific money amount to every person that dies, it becomes, if these many people get eliminated, I will make this much. Which then becomes, is there a way I can ensure more people get eliminated? And morality goes out the window. Another thing I have to confess I was a little bit disappointed about was that the first game was, again, green light, red light, because I was hoping for something new. I was hoping for new games. But then, as soon as the game started, it made perfect sense. What they wanted to show was how that first game and the massacre that accompanies it plays when you have Gi-hun in the middle, who already knows what's about to happen, and trying to save other people from dying. The whole tension of people not believing what he's saying. I mean, he's saying something like the doll's eyes are motion sensors, and there I am watching this thinking, I can't fault people for thinking that's laughable. I mean, he's talking about a doll with motion sensors for eyes. It's ridiculous. It's one of those things that unless you see it, you won't easily believe it. So again, I can't fault them for not believing him, and I can't fault Gi-hun for not just telling everyone at that exact moment that he had won the games before, because as we see later, people interpret this as, oh, so you're saying you're a billionaire? So why did you come back then? Or people thinking he knows everything when, as we see later, he doesn't. Now, Season 2 doesn't complete all of the games since Season 3 is just around the corner and it's the final season, and that one will complete the whole story. So don't be disappointed that this season ends on a very well executed cliffhanger that will just leave you biting your nails until mid-2025. I want to focus on the 2 new games that we get this season, which are the Six-Legged Race and Mingle. The Six-Legged Race is diabolical. This game comes up just as we're starting to really get to know our characters and they start forming groups. And as an audience, we can kind of see where the characters we care about and the ones that might just be side characters are. So by this time, we at least have an idea of who we don't want to see die. So of course, the series does something genius. Gi-hun's group seems to be unusually well equipped to win the game because they have 2 Squid Game winners, 2 military men, and while the pregnant girl might seem frail, she totally beat the recruiter at Dakji, so she can give them a great start. But then there's Hyun-ju's team, which we instinctively recognize as the underdogs. The trans woman nobody wants in their team, the terrified girl who can barely talk, the old lady everyone underestimates, her man-child gambler of a son, and the crazy shaman lady. While we don't know these characters as intimately yet, we already have the beginnings of a connection to them. So what the writers do is that first we see 2 groups go through the course. These are people we don't know, but we see them suffer through it. It's funny at first until we start realizing just how little time there is to complete the 5 games. We even see one group sort of struggle, but clearly do much better than the other. Still, both teams fail to complete the course and both teams get eliminated. So of course, immediately after seeing 10 people get mowed down, it's the turn of the underdog team. The first 2 teams failing sets the stakes. Now we have to see a team we do care about, who have the odds stacked against them, go through that same gauntlet. It's beautifully plotted. It makes us worry that these people we're starting to care about won't make it. That part in our brain tells us they're not going to establish so many characters you like to just kill them all, right? But then there's that other part that still remembers the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, and there's a non-zero chance they might pull the rug from under us. That's definitely a writing thumbs up. Then we leave Gi-hun's team for the very last, but we're super confident they're going to make it. That is until Mr. Frontman, In-ho, Young-il, Korean Mads Mikkelsen, whatever you want to call him, starts throwing the game. Notice when he fails, he's always using his right hand, but then when he finally spins the top correctly, he's doing it with his left hand, which means he's totally doing this on purpose. There's also that little smile he makes when he's picking it up. It adds tension to a scene that would have otherwise been devoid of it. The fact that he then helps Gi-hun win the last minigame leaves you puzzled. Is he just with Gi-hun's mind at this point, just toying with him? They barely give us time to recover from that when we reach the second new game, Mingle, which honestly, it just gives me the creeps in ways I can't even express. In this game, they have to stand on a spinning platform while the creepiest, catchiest song in the universe plays. Until it stops and they hear a number. The players need to get into groups of that number and run into a limited amount of rooms and lock them before time runs out, or, well, you know. This is where the writing takes all of those characters it's been building up and just throws them in a blender. It literally spins. And you just know this is going to hurt. The music and the blinking lights don't make this feel any easier. It's chaotic. It makes you panic. The floor, as every single round goes, starts getting drenched in blood more and more. And you're wondering, is somebody going to slip with this? And honestly, that's a missed opportunity that nobody actually slipped on the blood. But it's kind of like sensory overload. Now, I'm going to focus on a few of those characters. First of all, I'm not going to talk much about Geum-ja here because at this point in the story, we pretty much only get the sympathy of, oh, she's pregnant and she doesn't want anything to do with Crypto Guy. I have a feeling that there's a much bigger role for her coming in season 3, but for now in season 2, she doesn't get much to do as far as character development, so I'm going to focus on other characters, starting with Geum-ja, because she's pretty much the heart of the season. We first only see her as this stereotypical Asian mother. Don't yell at me, please. Almost half of my family is Asian, so believe me, I know the Asian mother. But we learn so much about her as the season progresses. She fought in the Korean War. She's kind of a tough cookie, and she doesn't just adore her dumbass of a son, she takes in others as if they were family. She's warm, caring, and I swear, if things go like the previous season, I'm not ready for her to die. The way she builds bonds with other characters makes her precious to us, and the writers know this. It's an important principle of writing. If the other characters care about this character, you also care about this character. Unless you're talking about like the Bella Swan type of character that everyone just keeps saying, oh, she's so special, but you don't even know why. Every moment she's in danger, you feel it in your bones. When they need to get in groups of 3 and 2 guys grab Young-sik, leaving his mother behind, and you see how he stops fighting them at one point, you see the acceptance in her face. You die inside a little until, oh my mother Jesus, thank you, they saved her. It's even more heartbreaking that she defends her son's honor, even though she saw him stop struggling as he was taken away. I thought where the story was going was that because he voted to stay, he was about to lose his mother. And when you look at the character's face, you know he thought the same. Immediately after you see them holding hands, you just know he's not going to let go of his mom anymore. The next character I want to talk about is Thanos, who is here not just to be Crypto Guy's main antagonist, but also to be an overall force of chaos in the season. And oh my god, he's so freaking annoying and charming at the same time. TOP did such a spectacular job with this character, and he became an instant fan favorite. In most votes online, he comes out as one of the top characters, if not the top characters, always rapping cringy lyrics at women, spouting phrases in English, thinking that makes him sound cooler, and just being an overall menace. Thanos is an absolute legend. This is the kind of character that you're meant to hate, and you do at times, but you can't stop loving him. There's this huge controversy in Korea because TOP was sentenced to jail because of drug possession, and he was banned from Korean television. Look, I'm not going to criticize a culture outside my own or question an entire country's laws, but if we take it as a grave offense, like the Korean authorities clearly do, I believe that human beings deserve the chance to improve from their mistakes, especially when there hasn't been direct harm done to another person's physical well-being. I feel doing this on national television does more harm than good, and I hope TOP rides this wave of popularity and becomes an actor in the US or Europe to rebuild his career. He knocked it out of the park as Thanos, and he deserves that chance.
Welcome back, my friends.
The next character I want to talk about is Hyun-ju, which for me was the breakout star of the series. Her background story is heartbreaking. After coming out as trans to friends and family, her parents stop talking to her, she loses her job and all her friends, and now without a job, with debt from surgery and other life expenses piling up, Hyun-ju is here to make enough money to move to Thailand, where trans people aren't as discriminated, where she can complete her transition mansion and buy a small house to live out her days. Now, of course, because we live in the world we live in, some people immediately took to social media to shout, "Forced inclusion!" And this is nothing of the sort. You see, when somebody says forced inclusion, and if I try to understand it in their terms, I understand what they mean is a diverse character that seems to be there to be better than everyone and have no defects and be a perfect example of morality and to be a Mary Sue. I think that would be annoying. Regardless of the character's gender, it wouldn't have anything to do with the character being trans, but Hyun-ju is not a Mary Sue. Yes, she comes off as a leader because of her military background, and she's one of the most sympathetic characters in the series, even building a close connection with other characters the audience gets attached to, like Geum-ja, who goes through her own "I'm from another generation and don't understand trans people, but I really appreciate you" arc. But what sets Hyun-ju apart is the fact that she is a complex character. She isn't just this morally perfect character. Yes, she can build a meaningful relationship with other characters, but ultimately she's there for herself, at least at first. She isn't selfless when the story begins. She's just using her leadership for her own survival, and she needs to make money. So she votes to stay twice. That is, until episode 6 comes around the corner like a speeding truck, and that's when she realizes her actions have consequences. That is what truly makes people calling Hyun-ju forced inclusion so wrong. Hyun-ju isn't Disney inclusion. Jesus, that's like the second or third video in which I use Disney as a bad example. Do I hate Disney? What have I become? Hyun-ju is a three-dimensional character who isn't a bad person, but who makes a selfish choice that has a very high cost. Young-mi is a character that bonds with her from the beginning, and is actually one of the characters that says, "You're beautiful," when she probably hasn't heard anybody say that about her. And Young-mi keeps calling her Uni, which means older sister. And because of choosing to stay, Hyun-ju now has to watch Young-mi die. These are the consequences of her actions, and that is the moment that turns the character around. In the next vote, she chooses to leave. There was also some controversy about actor Park Seung-hoon being a cis male playing a trans woman. The show's creator justified this by saying because of a lack of acceptance in Korea of trans people, few actors come out as trans, and so the decision was made to cast Park Seung-hoon in the role. But this is one of those things in which we're trying to apply Western sensibilities to an Eastern culture. Cultures evolve and change at their own pace, as us here in the West went through our own process when it comes to this topic, and as we have seen, that process is still ongoing. I think just the inclusion of this character in Squid Game is a step in the right direction, and additionally, Park Seung-hoon plays the character not just with amazing talent and emotion, but with tons of dignity. The producers consulted with trans people to ensure that the portrayal felt sincere and human. This is a character that the world has fallen in love with, and this helps open the doors little by little for more acceptance in Korean television. Finally, the last character that I want to talk about is Young-il, the frontman, or Player 001. What I love about the frontman's performance in the season is that you can actually see him be sort of fascinated by Gi-hun and by some of the other players and their attempts to survive. At some points, he also can't help but get pulled into the hype of everything. Probably one of the most evil pieces of sabotage that he does is during the third vote, because he forced a tie. At first, it seems strange that the frontman would vote to stop the games, but he ended up earning Gi-hun's trust, which he was already well on the way of earning, and also what he did by forcing a tie is kicking off the special game, which is basically a free-for-all in which the players fight against each other just to make sure that they have the numbers for the next vote. This was definitely a curveball that I was not expecting in the season, and it just adds so much, not only because of the fact that the character himself is so intriguing, but because of the performance, which is just amazing. Now I want to talk real quick about what didn't work about the season season, and there's one arc in particular, that's Jun-ho's, who's looking for the front man, his brother In-ho, and I feel that this arc just didn't work at all. If they were not going to complete it, or if it wasn't going to have an important development in the second season, they should have just either compressed everything into a single episode, or just split it in two and maybe do like one part in one episode, one part in the other, and that's it. Because the way it is right now, since nothing is resolved in Jun-ho's search for the island, the arc is there to get in the way of the meat of the season, which are the games and Gi-hun and the other characters. Every time you have to cut back to the people in the boat, you go like, because it interrupts the flow of the episode and it doesn't go anywhere. There is also the fact that they have the worst possible red herring in the boat captain. There's this one scene in which he's talking to this other character in which he's wearing this sweater, and if you look at the print and the color on the sweater, you could have figured out that he is in cahoots with the people running the game. Those are the colors of the game, and the figures that are embroidered into that sweater are kind of like twisted shapes of the ones that you see in the games. So there's a big hint there, but it was really unnecessary because at one point you just kind of figure out that the guy is just trying to delay Jun-ho or stop him altogether. So when they reveal that in the final episode of the season, it's not a surprise. Also, and this is a big riding thumbs down, is the fact that in the final episode of the season, the resolution that they give that arc in the boat when they finally reveal that the captain is a traitor doesn't involve Jun-ho. You don't see him. You don't get anything to kind of tie over Jun-ho from this season to the next. It just kind of ends, but there's nothing going on with the character at that point. So for me, this arc was a big miss. Overall, I felt this season was excellent. Yes, it had a slow start, but the body of the season, the bulk of the season was very exciting. I fell in love with a lot of its characters. I can't wait for season 3 to come out and see how this ends. What do you guys think of this season? Let me know in the comments what you thought of the season. If you have any theories, I can't wait to read them. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you know whenever I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Carlos, and I'll see you next time.